Aloha and welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the Got Your Six podcast. This six-question podcast brings together high performers to share their methods, strategies, and ideas, delivered in an informative and, most importantly, actionable way that'll help you lead yourself and those around you from the battlefield to the boardroom. Coming to you every episode, I'm your host, Tony Nash. And into the breach.
Nothing mentioned on this podcast is an endorsement or opinion of the Department of Defense.
I got your six, we got your back. Got your six, we got your back. Got your six, we got your back. I got your six.
Sixers, what an absolute treat we have for you this week. We've had some absolute legends on this show before, but today's guest, you might not know who he actually is, but you've seen his face all over Instagram, all over TikTok. I'm talking about Josh Green. He's a video creator, but you probably know him better as One Punch Dad or Chief. With his, what are we going to say? Your internet unit, your internal staff. We got CW, Billy T. Friendly, CW5, Billy T. Friendly, Sergeant First Class, Willie Water Hazard, Major David, in air quotes, the Sergeant Major, yeah. Lieutenant Colonel. Josh, thank you so much for coming on the Got Your Six podcast.
Tony, it's a pleasure. I'm glad to be here.
So, first off, what was the video that you knew, like, hey, there's something here. We got to kind of keep exploring, keep trying to like iterate a little bit and understand how far can we kind of push these characters?
So, it's funny. I was on TikTok for a while before I really started doing the character stuff, and I was kind of, just doing the lip sync stuff. You'd find a funny audio, and you're like, oh, I can relate that to like a situation I deal with daily. And it's kind of, TikToks are kind of like memes in motions, right? So it's almost like a meme that you get to act out and perform a skit, sometimes with other people. Usually with me, it's by myself. So I'd been doing that for a while. And just one day out of the blue, I was actually, I was just thinking about like, man, Lieutenant Colonels all act the same, kind of. They really do. They're not. I mean, they're all individual humans, but when they're in character, I guess, man, they really just pull from the same bag of mannerisms and tropes. And so I just in one take, I put my glasses down on the crook of my nose, and I found a filter that kind of stretched my face out a little bit. And I was like, I'm just going to riff. And it immediately people were like, that's my boss. That's my BC. That's my battalion commander. Or that's my G3, lieutenant colonel, whatever. And then from then on, it was just like, okay, well, who else we got? So
you're just working your way through the staff at the battalion level. I absolutely love that.
No one is safe. Yeah.
Yeah. And as you continue to create these characters and, look at the humorous side, right? And looking at ways to make people smile, because you're not attacking anybody, right? And that's what I think is what I love about your content. It's very funny. You're just kind of poking fun at the humor, all of like the oddities that go on. But I'm sure you've gotten to the point now, like you're going through your day and you're like, oh, that's content. You're in a meeting. You're like, oh, that's definitely going to we're going to do something with that later. Is that kind of how it goes, or what does that process look like?
It is 100%. You're an Army leader too. We all kind of don a character. And it doesn't matter if you're a drill sergeant on the trail, or you're a lieutenant giving a range brief, or a field grade officer, briefing QTB slides. We all kind of put on airs a little bit, and we all kind of adapt. Even warrant officers do it. I'm guilty of just doing things, and I'm like, I'm just doing this because I saw someone else do it and it appeared effective. But that was kind of the basis, was just like, okay, I'm going to find whatever those grab bags of tropes that all these different populations are pulling from, and I'm just going to dump it out on the table, and we're going to play with them. But yeah, absolutely. Whenever I'm having interactions with, my, fellow warrant officers or other officers, all in good fun, but absolutely the record button is on. So I know anyone who ever has to give a briefing with me in the room now is going to be like, oh gosh, like, is this going to end up, am I going to get lampooned for this? So
Steve Leonard, who does Doctrine Man, had the same, had kind of an outer body experience when General Odierno was briefing. He was a room full of people, and he said, Now, I hope what I said doesn't end up on Dr. and like looked him dead in the eyes during the briefing in front of like all these people, and he's like a colonel at the time.
Yeah. It's funny because like I take my job very seriously. I'm not like, I laugh. I'm not a stick in the mud at work, but I'm very much like, I get in, chief green mode, and I'm very much there to serve my customers, as I say, and to do a good job and to leave it all out on the table every day. But every once in a while, someone who knows that I have a TikTok will be like, "Hey, you gonna make a TikTok about this? You gonna do that?" And I'm like, "Nah, I'm not doing that right now."
Before we kind of dive more into that, though, I want to kind of pull it back and like understand where your kind of comedic timing, your love and appreciation for comedy comes from. Is it like a specific individual, a group of people? Has it always just been like you've been the funny guy in the room, or?
I think I always wanted to be. One thing that, if you do research into like any comedian, if you're a big stand-up comedy fan or anyone who started maybe in stand-up comedy and now they're an actor, the success to fail rate is not always favorable sometimes. I think in high school and even my early years in the Army, I made plenty of jokes in a group setting that did not land. I'm also kind of a nerd, so I can make a joke that's maybe kind of a niche or obscure reference, and for me it's hilarious, but, you get a room full of other, like, professionals, they're just kind of like, I didn't get it, But, yeah, I love Jim Carrey. I love the slapstick, kind of like Ace Ventura style, just, like, be crazy and be weird and take people to an uncomfortable but funny place, and, My mom and dad watch my TikToks, so I occasionally will overstep the PG-13 line, but I try not to do it too much because I know they're watching. But occasionally I'll get out there and, take it into not super R-rated territory, but a couple F-bombs, never hurt anybody, I guess.
Yeah, dark enough. Yeah.
Yeah, dark enough. Yeah. I'm like AMC when they first started, putting the, like Breaking Bad on TV. We're edgy, but not too edgy. So,
and Sixers, I'll warn you right now, right before we go any deeper in this conversation, there will be nerd references throughout. So if you don't get it, we'll just make sure we plug those in the show notes.
So just don't stare at me awkwardly over it.
Right.
Make me uncomfortable.
I won't. I promise. So as you kind of understood that, working through the comedic timing piece of that, and like seeing what kind of landed. One thing with like comedians that are super successful is that a lot of them say like it takes a while to like understand who their authentic self is. Like, when did it start to click with you? Like, hey, I am not being somebody else. I'm being Josh. I'm not trying to be somebody else.
That was not like a moment, that was kind of an exploratory journey for me. Cause I think, when I got on TikTok and I realized like, oh, hey, people are liking this. And, I started, having people come up to me, and say, "Hey, man, you're that guy. You're the guy. I saw your video. That it did start to kind of, had a conflict. I had on one hand, I always wanted to be an actor, and I always wanted to be this kind of comedic center of attention and have people laughing and, have people come up to me and say, oh, I love your stuff, But also I want to be a successful, 140 Alpha. I want to be a successful warrant officer, and I want to be said to have done my job well. And, so I had a lot of anxiety about the balance that I was striking in my professional life and my TikTok life, I guess. So I had to kind of consider like who I was going to be at what portions of the day and what that pie chart looked like. There were days I think I let myself be a little bit too much TikTok, and there were days where I had to let the pendulum swing the other way, and I had to be, serious chief for a couple of days just to kind of make up for that. So, as far as internally, it was definitely like to go from giving a serious brief to your staff back to, all right, now we're going to, hat and cane, do something silly. Yeah, exactly. Like that's a gear shift, and it actually does kind of take a toll if you're not aware. of the occurrence of the gear shift. So if that
How
answers
do
your
you?
question.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I want to kind of dive a little bit deeper into those gear shifts. Like, how do you set like almost like a routine around that gear shift where it's not like, somebody trying to understand how to drive standard for the first time?
One thing that I have done that I was a little worried about, because I think any military creator would be remiss if they didn't deny that a video that you make in your uniform is probably going to perform a little better. That's a thing. I'm not afraid to say it. I straight up, I could tell a joke in this black T-shirt I'm wearing, and I could tell the same joke in uniform, and I guarantee you, the uniform video is going to perform better. I don't know if it's something people see that, and maybe they're surprised to see someone in a uniform, telling a joke or being serious or doing a funny voice, or doing a character. One thing I've started doing, I think that has been helpful for me, and I don't know if people have noticed or not, but most of the character stuff I've been doing is just my tan T-shirt. So I just, getting ready in the morning, I usually put on a fresh shave, and then, kind of in that space between waking up and going to work, or even after I come home from work and drop my top, which is kind of symbolic if you think about it, of, okay, I'm not Chief Green anymore. Now I can be One Punch Dad, and now I can kind of enter into this space where I can do this. They see the tan T-shirt and they still think, maybe it kind of conjures a military uniform for him, but it doesn't. For me, it doesn't feel like I'm letting that bleed into my professional life as much.
I think that's so key too, because not only is there that physical, like you said, the physical removal of your uniform top, but it allows you to be a little bit more creative and not feel this burden, especially like as a military creator too. Like, I understand that, like, where there's got to be a separation, and you have to be so mindful of that, because anything you do can be viewed by millions of people at any point, and you have to be able to say you have to be able to defend what you do at the end of the day.
Absolutely, and I think it does give me a little bit of space to, it doesn't say U.S. Army on my chest anymore, and at that point, it's not like I'm trying to run wild and just drag the Army through the mud. I'm very grateful for my time in the Army, and I love it, and 100% want to keep doing it. But I also don't want to make jokes on their behalf, and I think in my early days of TikTok, I maybe didn't think about it as much. I also didn't have as many followers, so I didn't think it was that big of a deal. And now as my platform has grown, I've been like, I got followed by Warrant Officer Recruiting the other day on Instagram. It's like, okay, we really need to think about the message that we're sending to potential candidates and people who maybe are considering a career as a warrant officer now, because it's not just a handful of people watching now, it's a good chunk. So yeah.
And making sure you keep that audience front of mind, but also making sure you're authentic to yourself, and kind of keep going back to that, is critically important. And I tip my hat to you for doing that, because like you said, it is a journey and it takes a while to get there. And along the journey, you're gonna kind of stumble along the way and things like that. But like where you are on the journey right now, what kind of challenges or things are you working on to kind of better and hone your craft, both as a content creator and then, maybe professionally at work, that are somewhat intertwined?
So I do feel a kind of a tinge of guilt sometimes, because I have kind of amassed, a pretty decent platform, and I'm very proud of it, and I'm very grateful to everyone who's out there, following and commenting on One Punch Dad stuff. As of late, I have kind of eased back on a lot of the professional development stuff, and it's not because I just don't want to do it or I don't see the value. I would love to do more, honestly. I get a kick out of, I think a lot of people, when they think about, hey, I want to submit a warrant officer application, they're really nervous and reticent to actually approach a warrant officer and talk about that. What a lot of people don't know is that, especially letter writing warrant officers, usually your CW3, 4, 5s, they are so eager. They are so incredibly eager to take time out of their day to hear your story, to understand why you want to become a warrant officer in your field. And that's true of me too. I think I want to do that more and use my platform more. Excuse me. I just haven't really I haven't really found a good, consistent touch point for that yet. I started a Discord, a couple weeks ago. I didn't really know much about Discord, so it kind of got flooded initially, but I'm looking at ways that I can grow that for professional discussion and kind of guiding people toward, because I get some of my most commonly asked questions are, hey, I'm in the Air Force and I want to be a U.S. Army warrant officer, or I'm a Navy warrant officer and I need to know a little bit more about my Army counterparts, stuff like that. So finding a way to say, hey, I'm a popular warrant officer, how can I centralize information about my craft for people and not just be a giant clown all the time? I love making people laugh, but also, there is also this feeling that I need to use my position as a, prominent warrant officer in the Army community or the Army internet community to help people out. So
to a little bit more background on your story, right? You transitioned into warrant as a staff sergeant. Do you remember kind of that moment and what that was for you when you made that decision of like, hey, I want to I enjoy what I'm doing here, but I really want to go and become a warrant officer?
It was, for me, it was kind of a mix. I would love to say that it was something that I thought about at length. It was kind of at the time it was believed that I was just going to have to do it then or miss my shot because of some things that were coming out about the tattoo policy at the time. And my warrant officer mentor at the time was like, hey man, they're going to change the regulation where if you have, arm tattoos that you can't request a commission. So you either do it now or you don't do it. So my initial plan was to wait until, maybe I gathered a little bit more expertise as a non-commissioned officer, but things being what they were, I put my packet in almost, I would say as an afterthought. The application process is pretty, there's a lot of resume writing and, you have to get a letter, you have to interview for that letter normally. So it wasn't something I did lightheartedly, but it was something that I kind of did and thought, we'll see what happens, but I don't really. I didn't think too much about it, and I actually continued to develop as a non-commissioned officer after I submitted my packet, not really knowing what I was going to do. But when I got selected to become a warrant officer, it was like, oh yeah, I forgot. I didn't forget, but it's kind of like I didn't think that was going to happen. I'm so grateful because it really, in hindsight, it put my career and my life on a wonderful trajectory. So.
And now looking at that trajectory, right, do you think kind of that takeaway lesson or something that you've constantly, and I'm going to kind of pull in some stuff here, and please tell me if I'm wrong, of kind of going in or jumping in when maybe you didn't feel ready, just like you've done with One Punch Dad, on the warrant track. Is that kind of a belief or understanding that has kind of really just greatly changed your life, or is there something else that we haven't kind of hit on yet that has really just been fundamental?
That's really it, man. It really, the Army, I tell a lot of people, and I'm not here to tell you I'm, air assault, ranger, sapper, or anything like that, but it truly is an organization that, as long as you're willing to do the work to submit the packet and to become physically able and physically ready, you can pretty much do whatever you want in this organization. And I really believe that to be true. There's some caveats there, obviously, and people get injured and stuff, but you can do whatever you want, and you absolutely can try whatever you want. I've really rarely been told no just out of principle for anything like that. I had people, when I was talking and espousing the idea of becoming a warrant officer, I had people tell me, you shouldn't do it. Why would you do that? That's, you are a 6-year, sergeant at the time when I actually put my packet in, you're too young, you're not going to, if you don't make rank, they put you out of the Army, you don't get retirement, all that stuff. I had mountains of discouragement around me. And I did it anyway. And now I'm not going to, I don't just sit around like thinking about all the crow they're eating now, but they were wrong. They were so wrong. If you have a mind to do something, and that extends to outside of the Army, it's kind of like the comedy thing, not every joke is going to land, and you're not going to get applause and laughter for every joke, but the ones that do feel so good. The victories that you get are enough to make you say, you know what, I'm going to make another joke tomorrow, and it may land and it may bomb, but So yeah, I think I'm glad I did it. I had every reason not to, but I'm glad I did it.
As we kind of look real quick at, the times where you're standing on stage, a joke's thrown out or a chance is thrown out there and you fail, right? You're just sitting in the silence. Can you talk about where you kind of sat in the silence or had to go through that failure that's just completely been an absolute success looking back on it now?
I think, there's, in the military, certainly, sometimes, I think no one really, depending on how egregious it is, no one really remembers your bad jokes as much as you do, or your, embarrassing moments. I have embarrassing moments for me that I brought up to people who were there, and they're like, I don't really remember that happening. I mean, it sounds bad, but, one of my biggest failures that I thought, for a long, long time after I joined the Army was I thought I gave up on my acting dream. I wanted to be an actor so badly before I joined the Army. That was what I wanted to do. I wanted to make films and be in films and be on TV and do voices on TV and do all that stuff and be a creative person. I played music. I was in bands and stuff. And there was a long period after I joined the Army and even into my non-commissioned officer time where I felt like I had failed or kind of given up. And it's hard, it's hard to make it as an artist and make that be your sole source of income. But I see now and I look at my life and I'm like, I get to be in the Army really, in my opinion, in the best possible way as a warrant officer, the way that suits me the best. And I'm also enjoying making people laugh. And, I get to continue to make music and I get to have my family and all that. Like, I really get the best of every world that I ever thought about. And it's, I'm not in Hollywood or anything, that's fine. TikTok kind of scratches that itch for me in a way. And I think my failure of not being able to be an actor or a creative was kind of washed away at this point because I am. That's who I am, and I get to do that and have my job. So,
right, like you said, and your family, right? It's that beautiful kind of everything you ever kind of looked for and searched for came together naturally based on your talents and just kind of saying yes to opportunities and jumping in. Like you said, you were making videos on TikTok when you were just kind of lip syncing, trying to figure out the platform, and I mean now it's massive.
Yeah. I was very resistant actually at first, and now it's like, man, I worked out. So
now, Josh, kind of as we close out, I have one final question.
Okay.
And it's really kind of, we're going to encapsulate our conversation. We kind of touched on it a lot, but I want to ask you directly. Josh Green, how are you better today than yesterday?
I think each day I feel better than the day prior because of mindfulness. I went through a lot of years not realizing how unintentional I was being in my life. I was doing a lot. I was doing a ton. I was going to the gym and I was busy at work, and my oldest son just turned 9. We've been having kids and going places and doing things. But I wasn't really thinking about the implication of every interaction, not just with my family and my wife, but just people I meet out in the world. And you in the Army, you meet so many people from different walks of life. I've met people from corners of the earth. I didn't think I was going to, have interactions with those kind of people.
Right.
And so today I feel better because I've considered things that occurred yesterday that I normally would have not thought about. So like yesterday
you've met
was
people from.
Yeah, sorry, yeah. Yesterday specifically, was Sunday, and I rested yesterday, and I normally would have kind of looked at that as just like being lazy and not doing anything. But I made an intentional choice to rest and to be at rest. And so today I felt invigorated and I felt ready because I made an intentional choice about what I was going to do, or in this case not do, I guess, yesterday. So I think just being intentional and being mindful of every interaction, because none of it is meaningless. None of it is meaningless. Every inch of your day, time is your life's currency. And whether you're spending it by the penny or you're spending it by the buck, you're going to get what you pay for. So just kind of being mindful about how I'm spending my time.
And we are extremely grateful for you spending this time with us. Josh, where can people go to find out more about you and One Punch Dad?
TikTok is my number one jam. One X Punch X Dad. We'd love to have you in the comments there and be laughing with us. And I'm also on Instagram. Instagram's kind of growing as of late, but it's the same, One X Punch X Dad. I've started using Facebook to kind of guide some of my videos over there for some of the more old-fashioned One Punch Dad fans. So you might start seeing some content pop up on your Facebook feed. And then I have a link tree in my TikTok bio that's got, sometimes I'll play video games on Twitch. It's kind of hit or miss. That's just kind of a fun thing. But yeah, TikTok and Instagram, that's where you can find me normally.
We will make sure we link the TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, and Discord all in the show notes for this episode. Awesome. Josh, thank you for sharing your strategies, your methods, and your ideas as you continue to evolve One Punch Dad and what that looks like. And most importantly, thanks for having our six, brother.
I got your six.
I don't know what you've been told, Sixers, but the lawyers would like us to remind you that the views, opinions, and comments expressed on the Got Your Six podcast are solely those of the hosts or guests, to include current and previous Department of Defense employees, and should in no way be considered the opinions of or endorsements on behalf of the Department of Defense or any of its components, divisions, contractors, or other current and previous staff members.